Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got a big show lined up for you. Let's get right into this one. All right, yeah, there's major changes coming to the college football playoff in the SEC and the Big Ten. They're getting ready to flex, and it's pretty obvious. Now, Petiti and Sankey have been meeting in New Orleans, and they've been talking about what they want to do. Now, realize that this following year, in 2025, this year, they have to get everybody to agree to make any changes to the playoff system that we currently have, which we've had for 1 year, which is the seeding, which is based on the highest ranked conference champion, not the highest ranked. And that kind of screwed up the whole playoff last season because you had two teams that were not in the top four that got a bye and got seeded high, and two teams that deserved to be in there got booted down. And that changed the complexion of the playoff. And so Sankey and Petiti, they want that changed. And they talked about, they had a joint press conference in which they expressed support for changing the seeding process to the college football playoff. And the reason this mattered so much, you had two teams, which was Arizona State and Boise State, that got a bye. And they were not ranked in the top four. And two teams got creaked out of that position, which would have been Texas and Penn State. So that changed also who got home games and who didn't. The way it should have gone was Boise State should have played at Indiana, and they would have played Oregon at the Rose Bowl. Clemson would have been at Notre Dame. They would have played Penn State. SMU would have been at Tennessee, and the winner would have played Georgia. So we would not have been going to Columbus. We would have played SMU at Neyland, which is a much better situation for Tennessee. The Vols got the worst end of this deal of the communist seeding that they did, where they said, well, you're not ranked in top four, but because you won your conference, we're going to put you in front of everybody else. And that didn't work out too good for us. And then Arizona State would have played at Ohio State, and the winner would have played number 3 Texas. So the two commissioners, the power commissioners, want that changed. Now, they're still wanting to make sure that the conference champions, the top 5 highest rated conference champions, get in the playoff. They just don't want it to be automatically seeded 1 through 4 like it was last year. They want the top 4 to be the top 4. And if you don't fall into that category, but you won your conference, you'll still be in the playoff. You just don't get that automatic bye that you got last year. Now, there's plenty of other changes that they're going to want to push, but that won't be until 2026. They just want this one change for 2025. And this is a very interesting power play. Because realize after this year, Sankey and Petiti have all the power. It's already been agreed upon, signed, the whole deal. So it's really a difficult situation for the other conference commissioners to be in. Because if they go against them and don't give them what they want here, what do you think is going to happen in 2026? Those two guys are going to say, oh, well, you know, y'all didn't cooperate in 2025. So pretty much we're going to do whatever the heck we want to do. And if you don't like it, there's the door. We'll just have our own championship that everybody will watch, and you can play, you can have an NIT. So it's tricky. They may end up getting this change. Now, I don't know how much they really want it. I think they want it, but if they don't get it, that's fine too. That serves their purposes. Now let's talk about what leverage that the other commissioners might have. And this was Paul Feinbaum with Greg McElroy on Always College Football talking about that very thing, leverage.
When you look at let's just use the Big 12 as example. What leverage do they have? And I know people say, well, you know, do they need leverage? Should they need leverage to be able to kind of continue to live in the college football world that it looks like we're going towards? But
I don't see what leverage they do have. I mean, unless you have a bunch of people at the table who just want to be inclusive of everyone. And quite frankly, I think we've passed that point. And I don't want to be a bully. I just want the best system. And I think it is a fact that if the SEC and the Big Ten wanted to say, we're done with all of you, they could easily get away with it. I don't think that's really their goal.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's the deal. They're going to have to go along with what those two conferences want. Now, again, whether or not they get the seeding change for this year, we'll see. But moving forward, they're going to get what they want. And later in this, Greg asked Paul what he thought the primary goal is of Sankey and Petiti as far as protecting college football or protecting their conference.
Does Greg Sankey and Tony Petiti, the commissioners of the SEC and the Big Ten, Do they need to continue to consider their own self-interest, or do you think it is beneficial long-term to the SEC and the Big Ten to look out for the greater good?
Greg, their job is to protect their member institutions. These are not, neither one are at the UN trying to save world hunger or world peace. They do. You know both. I know both. I think they both care about the sports that they represent. But ultimately, the job of both is to represent 18 and 16 different universities, and I think they will. And I think if history will prove that the alignment between Sankey and Petiti is one of the most important and consequential in the history of college athletics. It came at the right time, and you have very sensible people now trying to find a path forward.
And then at the end, Greg talked about the playoff and how much better it was for the country. And I'm talking about all the regions to have teams included, as opposed to the 4-team, which was always Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, and then either Michigan, if Connor Stallions was around,
the sign stealer guy,
or some other team like a Clemson, which meant anything to the west of the Mississippi, forget it. You didn't get to be included, really, which is not a lot of fun for the rest of the country. And I thought this was a pretty interesting comment.
Do I acknowledge that the Big Ten and the SEC have way more big, traditional, powerful brands? Yes, that is a reality. But I do know this. I know that there was an awful lot of interest nationwide in the college football playoff this past year. Why? Because we finally saw representation from every geographical part of the United States.
I think that's a good point. It's not fair for the rest of the country to not be included in the playoff on some level. It's just, it kind of stinks. It hurts viewership, and it hurts the game. That's one of the reasons why I've really been in favor of having a larger playoff field. And we're going to talk about that here in a second. All right, now the biggest thing that's coming up would be 2026 moving forward through 2031. They're going to be cutting a 6-year deal. We know it's going to at least move to 14 teams. And again, this is the SEC and the Big Ten will make the final decision. And as far as the Big 12, ACC, Group of Five, all that, you probably had better just be satisfied with whatever deal you get and hope it doesn't change.
I am altering the deal. Pray I don't alter it any further.
Yeah, you're dealing with Darth and Emperor Palpatine on this one. So the possibility of going to 16 is highly likely, and here's why. There's a couple of reasons. Number one, the Big Ten wants the SEC to go to 9 games. Well, the SEC won't go to 9 games unless they get more money from ESPN. Well, if ESPN pays the SEC more money, which people believe they will because that would be a more appetizing product, better games, the Big Ten will play the SEC in a matchup, which would be great for ratings, and that's even more money. So you get more money for the 9 games. You get more money for the Big Ten SEC matchup, and then you get more money for the 16 teams. And because of the guaranteed 4 spots for each conference, which is 4 for SEC, 4 for Big Ten, 2 for the ACC, 2 for the Big 12, plus Notre Dame, a Group of 5, and possibly at-large bids, if you do add the 9th game, the SEC is going to want the highest possibility to get as many teams in as possible because it's going to hurt their record. And we realized from the College Football Playoff Committee last year, they did not take strength of schedule into account anywhere near the way people thought they should. And they're not going to in the future either. I can just go ahead and tell you. So you're going to need some guaranteed spots and all that. I would prefer just take the top 16 and have a computer-based rating where you take strength of schedule, you put it in on the front end, make it matter, and then just let the computer rating handle it from that point forward and take all the human interaction out of it after that. And just top 16 goes. But I doubt they'll do that. They want those conference championships to matter. I think what they will do, if they go to 16, it eliminates the buys. They'll simply say, if you win your conference, the top 5 conferences, you're automatically in. You just don't get the guaranteed seed. We're still going to go 1 versus 16, 2 versus 15. There are no buys with 16. The numbers don't work otherwise. So there's a high likelihood we're going to that because every team needs more money with the settlement and the revenue sharing and all that. And we've talked about that. And I've gone out on a limb, think they're going to do all that. I think they're going to do 16 teams starting 2026 moving forward. And they're going to do the 9 games in the SEC and do a Big Ten versus SEC. I think all that's going to happen because money, money, money.
Comes in pretty handy down here, bub.
Oh,
Now, obviously, we'll find out fairly soon because they're meeting next week with all the conferences, and they're going to talk about all this stuff. So we're going to start finding out about this, and they got to plan out 2026 well in advance. So I think we'll know within weeks. And I know a lot of folks right now think that what's happening with college football is crazy and it's out of hand.
In a word, chaos.
Yeah, chaos is probably the right word. But the reality is this is just growing pains. And it's probably going to be a better product long term, certainly the college football playoff for everybody involved. Maybe not for the purist, maybe not if you're a Georgia fan, Ohio State fan, or Alabama fan because you've enjoyed the 4-team deal. But for everybody else, it's good to have more teams in it. So anyway, that's just an opinion, and I wanted to cover all this because that's the big thing everybody's talking about right now in college football is where are we moving towards on college football playoff, schedule, all this stuff. And I have never seen the changes that we're having right now in college football. It's incredible as far as you almost can't keep up with it. And it's going to continue this way for the next 2 or 3 years because of all the major changes that were caused by all these federal courts. You know, this revenue sharing, the schedule, the college football, all this stuff is creating all this change. And I'm going to be here to cover it. And if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Let's continue to cover all these big college sports stories. If you've not subscribed, right here, hit this button right here. It'll help you get my videos and help you keep up with all this stuff. And right over here is the most recent video YouTube thinks you'll enjoy based on your viewing history. We'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay.
Well, come to see a fat old man sometime. Yeah!